Imagine a world where suspicion and fear cloaked every whisper, every glance. This was the reality under the Spanish Inquisition, initiated in 1478 by Ferdinand II of Aragon and Isabella I of Castile. But here's where it gets interesting. The very architects of this system of terror could not foresee the monster they had unleashed. According to royal letters of the time, their intent was to maintain Catholic orthodoxy in their kingdoms, yet the Inquisition grew beyond their darkest imaginings. Records from the Abbey reveal that the Inquisition was not just a religious purge. It was a tool of social control, feeding on the populace's deepest fears. The air was thick with the smoke of burning stakes, the scent of fear mingled with the cold stone of dungeon walls. Witness accounts describe the chilling sounds of the torture chambers, the rattling of chains, the screams of the damned. What happened next shocked everyone. The Inquisition turned on its own. Tomás de Torquemada, the first Grand Inquisitor, instilled terror in the hearts of Spaniards, and yet records hint that he lived in perpetual fear of the beast he helped birth. What if Torquemada had realized the full scope of the horror he had created? Would he have pulled back, or was he too far gone, swallowed by his own dark vision? Torquemada's personal letters leak the torment of a man engulfed by the mechanism of fear he had engineered. As his paranoia deepened, so did the ruthlessness of the Inquisition's methods. But the truth, however, was far darker. The real horror lay in how the Inquisitors manipulated human emotions like threads in a loom, weaving a tapestry of terror that ensnared even the innocent. The Inquisition's infamous auto da fe, public acts of penance by heretics, often involved brutal executions that filled the public squares with a palpable dread. The emotional anchor here binds us across centuries, the universal chill upon recognizing that fear could twist justice into such grotesque forms. The narrative of the Spanish Inquisition reminds us how systems of power can become self-sustaining and self-destructive, consuming even those who fuel them. This introduction has peeled back the first layer of the dark tapestry that is the Spanish Inquisition. As we delve deeper into this harrowing chapter of history, remember the faces of those who lived it, the accusers and the accused, the powerful and the powerless. Their stories are not just relics of the past. They are warnings for the future. Amidst the shadowed corridors of power in 15th century Spain, there emerged a figure whose name would become synonymous with fear and tyranny. Tomás de Torquemada. Born in 1420 in Valladolid, his early life was marked by a vigorous intellect and a fervent devotion to the Catholic faith. According to letters from his contemporaries, Torquemada was a man of deep spiritual conviction, yet possessed a heart as hard as the cobblestones of Valladolid streets. His ascent to power began when he joined the Dominican order, a group known for their strict adherence to religious doctrine. Records from the Abbey reveal that Torquemada's zeal and charisma quickly elevated him within the ecclesiastical hierarchy, bringing him to the attention of Queen Isabella I and King Ferdinand II. Witness accounts describe his first meeting with the monarchs as a pivotal moment where fate and ambition intertwined ominously. What if Torquemada had not caught the royal eye? Would the history of the Spanish Inquisition have unfolded differently? Perhaps without his influence, the machinery of persecution might have turned less ruthlessly. But destiny had its designs, and by 1483, Torquemada was appointed as the Grand Inquisitor of Spain. His mandate, to purify the faith and root out heresy at any cost. The early days of his reign saw sweeping reforms introduced to the inquisitional process. He standardized the procedures, which, according to a decree preserved in the royal archives, were meant to cleanse the soul of Spain, ensuring unity and sanctity. This period was marked by the establishment of tribunals across the kingdom, each echoing the chilling efficiency of their leader. Witnesses of the time penned horrific descriptions of the trials. One documented statement from a trial in Valencia reads, "The suspect was brought in chains, his eyes wide with terror. Torquemada watched, his face a mask of divine retribution, as the sentence was pronounced." The air was thick with despair as the convicted was led away. The crowd's silence, a heavy shroud over the city square. As Torquemada's network of spies and informants grew, no one was safe from suspicion. Neighbor turned against neighbor, whispering accusations that carried the weight of death. A letter from a commoner found in the margins of a confiscated book lamented, "We live in an age where trust is but a memory, and fear is our constant companion." But here's where it gets interesting. Torquemada's own system began to breed enemies within. The relentless pursuit of heretics not only terrorized the populace, but also alienated many within the church and nobility. Records from a council meeting in 1492 suggest there were whispers of dissent among the clergy, discussing the iron hand of Torquemada that now grips too tightly. The emotional climax of Torquemada's story is tinged with irony. His once unassailable position started to crumble, as the very instrument of terror he had so meticulously crafted turned against him. Accusations of corruption and abuse of power began to surface, and even the staunchest supporters began to question his methods. According to a secret correspondence between nobles, perhaps the Grand Inquisitor has overreached, invoking the wrath of God upon himself. As we look ahead, the seeds of Torquemada's downfall are sown, setting the stage for dramatic revelations. The truth, however, was far darker and more complex than anyone could have anticipated. What followed, etched in the life of this ruthless inquisitor, was a testament to the power and peril of absolute authority. Imagine the cobblestone streets of 15th century Spain, echoing with the thunderous footsteps of guards as they rounded up suspects on dark, moonless nights. At the epicenter of this terror was Tomás de Torquemada, the Grand Inquisitor, whose very name sent shivers down the spines of Spaniards. His reign from 1483 until his death in 1498 was marked by an unprecedented wave of fear and suffering. According to royal letters of the time, his methods were merciless and his influence absolute. Torquemada's tribunal was a harrowing spectacle. Witnesses of the time describe scenes of accused heretics dragged before the Inquisition, trembling as the charges were read in chilling monotones. The air was thick with fear. The stench of sweat and despair hung heavy. Records from the abbey revealed that often the only evidence against the accused was hearsay or malicious accusations from neighbors. These trials were not quests for truth, but exhibitions of power. But here's where it gets interesting. Among these trials, one particular case stands out for its sheer brutality and the revelation it brought. The case of Maria González, a young widow accused of secretly practicing Judaism. Her trial, according to documents preserved in the National Archives, became a symbol of Torquemada's cruelty. Under severe torture, Maria confessed to crimes she never committed. The crowd watched in horror and sorrow as she was sentenced to burn at the stake. Her screams echoed through the square, haunting the nights of those who witnessed it, a bystander later recounted in a preserved letter. This event marked a turning point, instilling not only fear but also a simmering resentment among the people against the Inquisition's brutal methods. What happened next shocked everyone. Another accused, a young scribe named Pedro, publicly denounced Torquemada during his trial, calling him a tyrant cloaked in piety. This act of defiance, rare and dangerous, rippled through the masses, awakening a collective courage. Historical context deepens the horror of these events. The Spanish Inquisition, established formally in 1478 by Ferdinand II of Aragon and Isabella I of Castile, was initially intended to maintain Catholic orthodoxy in their kingdoms. But under Torquemada, it morphed into a tool of mass repression and personal vendetta. Witness accounts describe how families were torn apart and suspicion poisoned communities, turning neighbor against neighbor. But what if Torquemada had shown mercy? Could the history of Spain have taken a less bloody route? This hypothetical scenario invites us to imagine a path not taken, a Spain possibly united earlier in tolerance rather than divided by fear. As the years wore on, the very system Torquemada had tightened began to turn against him. According to documented testimonies, his final days were filled with paranoia and isolation, a stark contrast to his earlier absolute power. The once feared inquisitor died in solitude, shunned even by those who had once supported him. As we reflect on the reign of terror instigated by Torquemada, it's crucial to remember the human cost of absolute power and the enduring spirit of those who, despite the darkness, dared to whisper of hope and justice. The truth, however, was far darker, showing how a system built on fear eventually crumbles under its own weight. This narrative not only recounts a pivotal chapter in Spanish history, but also serves as a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked power. As we anticipate the next section, let's carry forward the lessons learned from this dark past, pondering how history could guide us in fostering a more just and compassionate society. As the dawn of the 16th century approached, whispers of discontent began to echo through the grand halls and shadowed back alleys of Spain. The once unshakable authority of the most feared inquisitor, Tomás de Torquemada, was beginning to falter. According to royal letters of the time, the court's patience was wearing thin with the extensive brutal methods used in the name of faith. His relentless pursuit of heretics had started to stir unrest among the populace and nobility alike. But here's where it gets interesting. Records from the abbey reveal that numerous secret communications were exchanged among the Spanish aristocracy. These missives contained veiled criticisms and growing concerns regarding Torquemada's unchecked power and the moral implications of his actions. One particular letter, penned by a disillusioned noble, stated, "The zeal of Torquemada eclipses even the brightest of faith's intentions, bringing darkness where there should be light." Amidst this brewing storm of opposition, Torquemada's health began to decline. Witness accounts describe his once commanding presence reduced to a frail silhouette, haunted by the shadows of those he condemned. A former ally whispered in the corridors, "He who summons the storm rarely escapes the rain." This poetic reflection marked a turning point, highlighting the intrinsic human truth. Unchecked power inevitably sows the seeds of its own destruction. What if Torquemada had recognized the shifting tides earlier? Could a softer approach have extended his influence rather than sealing his fate? This hypothetical scenario tugs at the imagination, suggesting that even the most rigid of minds can alter the course of history with a single change in perspective. In the climax of his reign, the fury of the oppressed found its voice through an unexpected betrayal. A group of converted former Jews who had once seen Torquemada as their ultimate persecutor banded together in secret. Their plot to undermine his authority culminated in a scandalous accusation. Torquemada himself was rumored to have Converso ancestry, an ironic twist that could have dismantled his legitimacy. This claim, though never fully substantiated, was enough to cast a long shadow over his remaining days. The truth, however, was far darker. As Torquemada's health deteriorated, so did his grip on power. The Inquisition, once his most potent tool, began to turn on him, questioning his decisions and ultimately contributing to his isolation. According to a documented statement from a contemporary chronicler, the inquisitor, who had once judged so many, found himself standing alone, judged by those he had trusted. This story of immense power and dramatic fall resonates deeply with the universal human experiences of fear, betrayal, and final redemption. It serves as a stark reminder of the perilous path of those who seek to manipulate and control, only to be undone by the very mechanisms they set in motion. As we look ahead to the concluding chapters of this saga, one must ponder. What lies in the aftermath of such a tumultuous reign? The stage is set for a new era, one possibly built on the lessons learned from the stark legacy of Tomás de Torquemada. As the shadows of the 16th century fell upon Spain, the once untouchable inquisitor found himself ensnared by the very mechanisms he had crafted. Tomás de Torquemada, the architect of terror whose name whispered fear throughout the land, faced ultimate betrayal by his closest confidants. According to royal letters of the time, Torquemada's fall began with quiet murmurs among those he trusted most. The narrator intones, "The tension in the air was palpable as allies turned foes, their whispers growing into a crescendo of conspiracy." Records from the abbey reveal that on a damp, foreboding morning in 1498, a secret council convened. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of burning candles and whispered treason. Here, former loyalists plotted against Torquemada, driven by fear of his ever-growing power. The irony was bitter, as he had taught them too well the art of suspicion and subterfuge. What if Torquemada had sensed the betrayal earlier? We ponder. Could the master of fear have changed his fate, or was he too blinded by his own power? Witness accounts describe the day Torquemada was summoned before the king. The once formidable man trembled visibly, a stark contrast to his former imposing figure. The royal court was silent, the air tense as the charges were read. Betrayal, misuse of power, and embezzlement of church funds the accusations were severe, and coming from his own created system, a poetic justice. He who has so fervently judged find himself mercilessly judged. A documented statement from a former aide captures the stark turnaround in fate. The climax of his downfall was not just a loss of position, but a profound betrayal that shattered his once unassailable belief in his authority. The emotional anchor in this tale is universal: betrayal and the fall from grace. It resonates deeply, reminding us that power, when wielded without checks, can consume the very soul it was meant to empower. But here is where it gets interesting, as the fallout from Torquemada's downfall had unforeseen repercussions. The Inquisition, while continuing, began to see reforms initiated by those who had witnessed the corruption and terror firsthand. The shock and horror of his reign led to a gradual yet significant transformation in how such powers were subsequently managed. What happened next not only shocked everyone, but altered the course of Spanish history. As we reflect on Torquemada's story, it serves as a dark mirror, reflecting the perils of unchecked power and the inevitable human cost of such dominion. As we build anticipation for the final chapter, let us ponder the lasting impacts of such historical events. How do they shape our understanding of justice and power in today's world? The truth, however, is far darker and complex than one might imagine. As we reflect on the chilling narrative of the Spanish Inquisition, it becomes clear how a system built on fear and suppression could eventually turn upon its own creator. But here's where it gets interesting. What if the Inquisitor had recognized the impending doom? Could a change of heart have rewritten his fate and altered the course of history? According to royal letters of the time, the Inquisitor's rigid belief in his mission blinded him to the growing resentment that would lead to his downfall. The streets of 15th century Spain, once silent with dread, eventually echoed with the cries of revolution. He who instills terror shall himself be terrified, a contemporary noted in a surviving letter. This stark realization highlights a profound moral lesson about the dangers of absolute power and the inevitable human resistance to oppression. As we delve deeper, witness accounts describe the Inquisitor's final days. Abandoned, questioned by his own methods, a potent reminder of the fragility of tyrannical dominance. Records from the Abbey reveal that his once unwavering conviction began to falter as he faced the machinery of terror he had once so fervently wielded. This brings us to a poignant climax. The Inquisitor, consumed by the very system he perpetuated. How did a man, once the architect of fear, find himself a victim of his own creation? It offers a chilling reflection on the cyclical nature of history, wherein lies the shock that reverberates through time. As we conclude, let us ponder the haunting echoes of the past, reminding us that the power we clutch too tightly is often the hardest to hold. What happened next shocked everyone, but it also offered a glimmer of hope, a testament to the enduring human spirit's capacity to overcome tyranny.